The more things change, the more they stay the same, although we are talking about Call of Duty, which has rarely changed at all, so it's more like the more things stay the same, the more things stay the same. To wit, Activision is obviously planning a new Call of Duty for this year because it's a new year and a new year needs a new Call of Duty. And this year's Call of Duty is going to be called Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Yep. Yeah. YouTuber Long Sensation. I'm a big baby. Leaked the name on Twitter saying Call of Duty 2019 is called Call of Duty Modern Warfare. I'm not joking. This news was backed up by Jason Schreier at Kotaku, so it does indeed look like Call of Duty will be called Call of Duty Modern Warfare this year, which of course is interesting. Now, this story is nothing to get up in arms about. I'm not sat here shaking my fist saying, this is an outrage! But I do find it personally a little bit interesting, so I wanted to talk about it today. As many of you will of course know, Call of Duty 4 was called Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. And it was a landmark title for the series. It revitalized the Call of Duty brand and made it the dominant force in games for its generation. It owned the late 2000s and most of the 2010s as well. And it was all thanks to Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, a fact that Activision is keenly aware of. I don't know if any of you remember this. I do, and I didn't see it brought up in any of the discussion about this story, about the new name for the next Call of Duty. But when Modern Warfare 2 was in production, that's exactly what it was going to be called. It was just straight up going to be called Modern Warfare 2 without the Call of Duty prefix. Basically, Modern Warfare had done so well for Activision, it tried to position the Modern Warfare series as its own franchise distinct from Call of Duty. Eventually, the Call of Duty name was slapped on the box art and everyone forgot that at one point Modern Warfare was going to be its own series, so that's why I find this name particularly intriguing, because I do recall that story. At the time of Modern Warfare 2, Activision was reportedly worried about brand awareness, which seems to be the reason why they eventually reneged on their plan to position Modern Warfare as a solo venture. And speaking of brand awareness, here we are in 2019, and the Call of Duty brand is not quite the hot property it once was. Don't get me wrong, it's still mega successful, it still makes a ton of money, but it's certainly not king of the mountain anymore. We've got Fortnite for that. Compounding this is the fact that the release of the last Call of Duty game, Black Ops 4, saw a major stock drop for Activision, a huge one in fact, because investors panicked, seemingly over the issue of it not being as successful as they wanted it to be. The amount of money it made was on par with the previous year's Call of Duty, and investors expected more, even though over 3 days it accrued over $500 million. Now, we've talked about this problem with quadruple capitalism before, how investors expect things to make exponentially more money forever. They expect perpetual growth, even though that's fucking impossible and a ceiling's gotta be hit somewhere. But it does lead to a pretty desperate company, a publisher that has that pressure to keep that growth going, even if it is almost impossible. So with all this in mind, it should come as no real surprise that they're gonna call this game Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Now, it's also funny, and you can poke at it for being silly and sort of turn to your friends and say, yep, it's really called that, I can't believe they called it that, but it actually makes sense when you consider what they need to do with this franchise. Activision, like most AAA game publishers, need their flagship series to constantly outperform itself. Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare was the game that catapulted the series into the mainstream and saw it really start to outdo itself year after year. Meanwhile, Black Ops 4 made less money than Black Ops 3, so Activision probably wants to avoid Modern Warfare 4. Besides which, numbered sequels aren't exactly in vogue these days. It's just not sexy. Hence, Call of Duty Modern Warfare. You see, I'm normally first out the gate when it comes to taking a big dump on Activision Blizzard's head, but in this regard, I actually do see the logic. Again, when you consider what Activision Blizzard is pressured to do with Call of Duty, this actually makes perfect sense. That said, however, this certainly should be seen as a sign that Activision's confidence in Call of Duty as a flagship series is itself flagging a little. Reports suggest Call of Duty Modern Warfare is going to be what Hollywood calls a soft reboot, a sort of vague reimagining of the original, which is what a lot of movie franchises do when they're out of ideas and they need to desperately kickstart their IP. A soft reboot avoids a company having to admit they're doing a remake, which has a bit of a bad rap after so many bad ones. Therefore, they can try and get people familiar with the franchise to bite off again while drawing in new people. Plus, they already remastered Call of Duty 4 and added microtransactions to it and price hiked the DLC for it because they're turds. There are also suggestions that development on the next Call of Duty planned for 2020 is in a little bit of a state. Sledgehammer and Raven were working on it, but they've been removed as leads and now Treyarch is heading it up. The situation Call of Duty finds itself in right now is the price of rampant success in an economic system that has no checks and balances, led by people who want more and more money whether that money exists or not. You can be the most successful franchise in the world, you can make more money than any other game in the world, but if you didn't make quite as much as the year before, you're a failure. Such is the fucked up nature of the game industry and industry overall that we're going to be talking about how Call of Duty can turn its fortunes around even as it continues to make literal fortunes. And that, in my opinion, is why Call of Duty is going to be called Call of Duty Modern Warfare. To do what Activision Blizzard needs to do? Well, it couldn't be called anything else.